Ladies and gentlemen, come gather around, come gather around, come gather around. Today, we're picking our nose, or at least fixing the boogers. So, once again, like most of my projects, I got too carried away and forgot to show you what I was gonna do. And here we are doing it. So, we're gonna be cutting out the rust that's been cut out and patched with the patches that you see on the ends. And we'll probably fairly soon sandblast this and coat it with primer and be ready to go. This thing isn't too bad for corrosion and death. Well, that's kind of weird. I'll see if I can fix that. But it's not bad.
The orange paint you see here is the original, and then there was sprayed on a green lacquer finish on top. So we got to cut through all of this and the disastrous undercoating that's underneath all of this just to see what we have and what we need to fix. Usually, scraping all of this down and peeling off all of the paint reveals a lot of disappointment. And you've discovered there's more stuff you got to fix, especially once you sandblast it too, but that's coming up later. Heat gun, screwdrivers, putty knife, they work really good at getting the undercoating off. The undercoating did a pretty good job of protecting everything from rust, except where it didn't stick, in which case it just rusted. I've ranted in a few other videos about how these things just rust so bad. I still think they were put together naked and then painted once they were assembled. So we're going to fix this a little bit more long term. I do have a sheet of 18 gauge sheet metal, and I'm cutting out the rust and discovering that little braces underneath that support everything is really, that's where it rusted. So I had to replace part of the braces before I could replace part of the outer skin. So, blah. Anyways, I'm making all the patches and shaping them and cutting them and forming them and hitting them and making them fit fairly well. I may have used paper to get the templates of what I want it to look like right. I may not have. I don't remember. You're watching this just as fresh as I am. I ain't remembering none of this. Anyways, trying to get it shaped and curved, and I'm getting better at working with this stuff. My favorite tools here are the cutting disc on an angle grinder and flapping sanding disc on another angle grinder. I have a bunch of angle grinders because I don't like changing them. Drilling out the spot welds, cutting out some pieces. You can see how nasty it is inside. Whole bunch of sheet metal from mistakes that I've made. I just cut out the piece that's going to work. In this case, I'm making the brace that is so disastrously rusty, I might as well do that before I can fix the outer skin. 1,000 times of trying it and shaping it and making sure it's going to fit. I tried to get everything to be 0 gaps so that it welds together easily and there's a minimum of shrinkage. If you can weld this with no filler, with TIG perhaps, there's going to be less shrink because there's less bead to contract when it cools. Sometimes it's not always easy to get in there with a TIG, but I'm trying my best. Sometimes if it's too hard, I'll just do it in MIG. But again, you want to try and keep the heat high and the wire speed low so that it can weld it together without too much shrink. These are actually kind of fun to do, getting the angles just right. It will all be hidden behind headlights and grill, and nobody's ever going to see it, so it doesn't even have to be good. These are probably pieces you want to do first so you can learn what it should be. So I'm attacking a couple of the braces here just because there was not enough metal to weld to. And that's just cut it to shape, I guess. There's one of them fancy magnet on hinges to hold things together for you. TIG weld it all together. Make sure it's all nice and clean. TIG has no sense of humor for impurities or imperfections. Sandblasted metal really welds nice. That fancy magnet thing holding it in place, golly, those are nice. I don't usually like welding near magnets. It tends to affect the arc, but those work pretty good, enough at least to tack it together. Got the Devo drill, the step drill for getting the hole sizes bigger and bigger. I label stuff with a felt pen so I know what the heck it is. Something was broken on the bottom of this, so I had to weld in just a little bit of a tab that later on I drilled a hole, and it holds a bracket or a brace or something to the underside. Then outside, this, oh my gosh, I love the sandblasting. I'm blasting with crushed glass, but man, I really like this pressure pot. It's really good. You will read lots of disappointing reviews about them. I love it. It works really well. I've had some adventures, some teething to figure it all out, but it works good. Do that in the driveway. I didn't blast the whole thing just in the interest of inclement weather, and I just wanted to get stuff done. And then inside, hose it down with some lacquer thinner, scuffing up the patches inside and out, and then I spray it with a epoxy primer. Let it cure for a couple days. The longer the better, because then you can weld it all in. And then plug welds with a MIG. I think I fit them all with TIG, and you'll see in a couple places, depending on the gap, because I tried to get 0 gap, but sometimes life throws you a curve. If I can do 0 filler with a TIG, I do it. If there's a bit of a gap, I usually have a piece of MIG wire in my hand, 23 thousandths. I think I have a spool of 30 thousandths, just to help for any holes that I might create with a little bit of youthful enthusiasm. In some places where there's a gap that really went wrong, I've got a 16th filler rod that I use to fill up the gap. And you'll see me kind of mixing between the MIG wire and the filler, depending on what I'm trying to close. But again, this will all be hidden away. You're not going to see it. These are basically behind where the bolts for the grill go. So unless I point it out to you, you're not going to notice any of this. I don't even think I need to grind these welds flat. I will, because why not? It's a good idea to kind of knock down the bead with a little bit of a grinder and then finish it with a sanding disc. It helps you sneak up to things. I'm not quite at a body master skill where I can weld it, grind it, and sand it, and you'll never know I was there. I'm pretty nasty. So I'm going to have acceptable levels of filler or exceedingly high amounts of thick paint. I don't know. I'm going to hide all of this. However, the more I do with this, the more fun it gets to be. I'm starting to be able to form these and get shapes, and I see a rusty spot, and it's like, okay, here's how I'd go about fixing that. It's starting to become kind of addictive. Not loving it, but I'm not afraid of it. Hard to get the hammer in there to plenish the welds in a few areas. Nice that none of this is going to really be visible. But if you can plenish the weld to stretch the metal out from whatever it did shrinking when you were welding it, you're more likely to have the panel stay in the shape it's supposed to have. Hard to access on the back in some places because of braces and brackets, and I'm not interested in undoing everything just to get in there. I think that was my homemade door panel hammer to get in there. Very cool. There's a dolly. I've been making a bunch of little dollies, depending whatever it is I need to hit or hammer or shape. A lot of them are just hunks around, welded to a stick so I can put it in a vise or hold it in my hand or whatever. I'm getting quite a collection of dollies that fit in whatever. Sanding it, cleaning up the nice edge, try not to hit the epoxy primer from underneath. And then we fit that one into place. Again, with a magnet on the hinges, tack it into place. This one, you can see the gap in the bottom right corner is pretty aggressive. And I'll switch to the fatter filler for that guy. Sometimes I have a bit of a difficulty sneaking up to welds with TIG. But I think in this case, apparently looking at it now, I set it with the pulse on to kind of control the amount of current that I put into this whole thing. Who knew? Who knows? I don't even remember most of this stuff. We should slow it down so you can see kind of just how fast this really is. Looks like about a 1 second pulse. TIG with MIG wire as a filler. I probably have the TIG set at about 50. Well, if I don't use pulse, I'll set it at about 50 amps. Then you got to stay on there so the shielding gas will help protect your weld for a little bit. Then you can have a big look at it. Disappointment. Hopefully you got enough heat to get some penetration on the backside. And that's about it, man. Scrape that nice and pretty. Tell everybody somebody else did it. Because that's what magic is all about. Leave a comment below if you like magic too. Subscribe. Tell all your friends.
And it's raining outside, so that's about as far as we got for sandblasting. This is all blasted on the inside and the outside, or I guess the front and the back. I didn't worry too much about the black areas there because I had sandblasted that and then primered. So that's still epoxy primer. So I just dusted it and I'm going to leave it. Guess you could have just kind of re-patinaed it and tried to keep it looking old and everything. But this thing had a lot of spots of rust, which just means it's going to keep rusting and I can't stand rust. So it's pretty. And epoxy primer once it stops raining. So there we are. And next time we'll work on something else. Thanks for watching.